Sophia, a high-achieving marketing manager, was struggling with debilitating anxiety. The kind that keeps you up at night, makes it hard to focus, and strains even your closest relationships. It's ironic, right? The more successful she became, the worse her anxiety seemed to get. We have her story and a handful of others, all dealing with anxiety in different ways. Let's see what we can learn from their experiences.
What's fascinating here is that we're seeing anxiety manifest in different areas of these women's lives. Work, motherhood, relationships. It's not just a general feeling of unease, it's impacting their ability to function and find happiness.
Right, and for Sophia, her anxiety was deeply tied to her work. She was constantly worried about deadlines, presentations, keeping up with the demands of her job. But then she stumbled upon something that seemed to help, a mindfulness workshop. I know, mindfulness can sound a little woo-woo, but stick with me here.
It's important to understand that mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind or chanting mantras on a mountaintop. It's about cultivating a sense of awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations without judgment. It's about learning to observe those anxious thoughts without getting swept away by them.
So how did Sophia actually apply this to her work? Did she start meditating in her cubicle?
Well, not exactly. She started using a technique called time boxing. She'd allocate specific blocks of time on her calendar for each task and commit to focusing solely on that task during that time. No more multitasking, no more letting her mind race ahead to the next thing on her to-do list.
That's interesting. So instead of trying to fight the anxiety, she shifted her focus to something she could control, her schedule.
Precisely. By creating this structure and practicing staying present in each moment, she was able to reduce that sense of overwhelm and regain a feeling of control over her workday.
So she wasn't trying to eliminate the anxiety completely, but rather manage it by changing her approach to work. That's pretty clever.
It's a great example of how a seemingly small shift in perspective can have a big impact on our anxiety levels. Now let's move on to Emily. Her story takes us into the world of new motherhood, a time that's often filled with both immense joy and a whole lot of anxiety.
Yeah, Emily's story is so relatable. Imagine this. You're a new mom, completely sleep-deprived, hormones are all over the place, and you're suddenly responsible for this tiny human being. It's no wonder anxiety is common during this phase of life.
Absolutely. Emily was dealing with a lot of the classic new mom anxieties, the constant worry about her baby's well-being, the pressure to be the perfect mother, the exhaustion that makes everything feel overwhelming. And this anxiety started to spill over into her relationship with her husband, creating tension and frustration.
Yeah, it's hard to be your best self when you're running on fumes and constantly worried. So how did Emily find her way out of this anxiety spiral?
Her turning point came when she decided to connect with other mothers in a support group.
So not a therapist or a self-help book, but other moms who are going through the same thing.
Exactly. It's amazing how powerful shared experience can be. In that support group, Emily realized she wasn't alone in her struggles. The other moms were dealing with similar anxieties, similar doubts, similar feelings of being overwhelmed.
It's like that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. But in this case, it was more like a problem shared was a burden lifted.
Right. It wasn't just about getting practical advice or tips for managing a newborn. It was about feeling seen, heard, understood. It was about realizing that these anxieties were normal, that she wasn't a bad mom for experiencing them.
It's like having a group of people who get it, who can say, I've been there, and it's okay to feel this way. That kind of validation can be so powerful, especially when you're feeling isolated and overwhelmed.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we don't have to go through these challenges alone. There's strength in community in knowing that others have walked this path before us and come out the other side.
So Sophia found relief through mindfulness and creating structure. While Emily found solace in connecting with others who understood her struggles, it seems like both of their stories highlight the importance of external support in managing anxiety. Now let's turn to Olivia, whose journey takes us in a slightly different direction.
Olivia's story touches on a fear that's incredibly common, especially in today's society. The fear of being alone, of not finding a partner, of ending up single forever.
Oh, that's a big one. It's like this pressure cooker of societal expectations. Dating apps, biological clocks ticking. It's no wonder so many people feel anxious about finding the one.
And for Olivia, this fear was starting to control her life. She was a successful designer, but her anxiety about being alone made her insecure and hesitant in social situations. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more anxious she felt, the harder it was to connect with others.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of desperation can be palpable.
Right.
And it tends to repel the very thing you're seeking. So what did Olivia do to break free from this cycle?
Instead of frantically searching for a partner, She made a conscious decision to focus on herself, on her personal growth, her self-love, her own happiness.
That's interesting. So instead of looking outward for validation and connection, she turned inward.
Exactly. She started exploring hobbies she'd always been interested in but never had time for, like photography and pottery. She took a solo trip to Europe, something she'd always dreamed of doing. She nurtured her friendships and reconnected with family members. Basically, she invested in herself and her own well-being.
And I'm guessing this shift in focus had a positive impact on her anxiety.
Absolutely. As she cultivated self-love and confidence, her anxiety about being alone started to fade. She no longer felt that desperate need for external validation because she was finding it within herself.
That makes sense. When you feel good about yourself, you don't need someone else to complete you. You're already whole.
Precisely. And as Olivia's confidence grew, she naturally became more relaxed and open in social settings. She was no longer approaching interactions with that underlying fear of rejection, which allowed her to connect with others more authentically. Olivia's story is a great example of how self-love can be a powerful antidote to anxiety. It's not about becoming narcissistic or self-absorbed. It's about recognizing your inherent worth and treating yourself with kindness and compassion.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to fill yourself up first before you can truly give to others, whether it's in relationships, work, or any other area of your life.
Exactly. And sometimes filling our own cup requires us to make some bold choices, to step outside of our comfort zones and challenge societal expectations. That's what Mary's story is all about.
Ah, yes, Mary. Her story really resonated with me. It's about that internal conflict many of us face when we try to fit into the boxes society creates for us. On the surface, Mary had it all. Straight A student, captain of the cheerleading squad, always volunteering her time. The perfect good girl, right?
But beneath that seemingly perfect exterior, Mary was hiding a passion that didn't quite fit the mold. Roller derby.
Roller derby. Wow, that's not what I was expecting.
Right. It's not exactly the typical extracurricular activity for a high-achieving student. But for Mary, roller derby was an outlet for her true self. It was a way to express her physicality, her competitive spirit, her love of adrenaline, but she felt like she couldn't reconcile this part of herself with the image she felt she had to maintain.
So she was living this double life. The perfect daughter and student by day. The rebellious roller derby girl by night. I can only imagine the internal conflict that must have created.
It was a lot of pressure. She was constantly worried about being judged, about disappointing her family and friends, about not living up to the expectations that had been placed upon her, and this internal conflict was fueling her anxiety.
So did she end up suppressing her passion for roller derby to maintain her good girl image?
Actually, she did something even more courageous. After graduating high school, she deferred her acceptance to Yale and joined a roller derby league.
Whoa, she chose roller derby over Yale. That's a bold move.
It was, but for Mary, it was about choosing authenticity over expectations. She realized that living a life true to herself, even if it meant going against the grain, was more important than trying to please everyone else.
And what about her anxiety? Did embracing her true self help her manage it?
Absolutely. By honoring her passion and living in alignment with her values, she released that internal conflict that had been fueling her anxiety. She actually said, "I'd rather be bruised and happy than miserable in a suit."
I love that. It's such a powerful reminder that sometimes managing anxiety requires us to make those bold choices, to prioritize our own well-being, even when it means challenging societal norms or disappointing others.
It's about recognizing that true happiness comes from living a life that feels authentic to you, not from trying to fit into someone else's mold. Now, let's transition to John's story, which takes us into the world of achievement and the sometimes hidden anxieties that can lurk beneath a seemingly successful life.
John's story is a classic tale of what happens when we achieve those external markers of success. The high-paying job, the fancy car, the luxurious apartment, but still feel empty inside. It's like that saying, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it.
John was living the American dream, at least on paper. He had a prestigious job on Wall Street, a penthouse apartment in Manhattan, a sports car that turned heads wherever he went. But despite all of this outward success, he felt deeply unfulfilled.
It's like he had achieved everything he thought he was supposed to achieve, but it hadn't brought him the happiness he expected.
Exactly. He was working long hours, constantly stressed, neglecting his health and his relationships. He was so caught up in the pursuit of success that he had lost sight of what truly mattered.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, especially in a society that often equates worth with achievement. So what happened? Did he just keep pushing himself until he burned out completely?
Actually, he had a wake-up call, a heart attack at age 35.
Wow. Talk about a sign from the universe that something needs to change.
It was a life-altering experience. It forced him to confront the fact that he was sacrificing his health and well-being for a life that wasn't bringing him joy. And so he made a drastic decision.
What did he do? Quit his job and become a yoga instructor.
He did quit his job, but he went even further than that. He sold his apartment, his car, everything he owned, and bought a one-way ticket to Nepal.
From Wall Street to the Himalayas, that's quite a shift.
It was a complete 180. He spent the next year trekking in the Himalayas, meditating in monasteries, volunteering in local communities. It was a journey of self-discovery, a chance to reconnect with himself and figure out what truly mattered to him.
It sounds like he was searching for something deeper, something more meaningful than just climbing the corporate ladder. Did he find it?
He did. He realized that true fulfillment wasn't about external achievements or material possessions. It was about living a life aligned with his values, connecting with nature, helping others, and most importantly, it was about prioritizing his own well-being.
It's a powerful reminder that it's never too late to change course, to step off the treadmill of achievement and create a life that feels truly authentic and fulfilling.
Absolutely. And sometimes that requires letting go of everything we thought we wanted, embracing the unknown, and trusting that we'll find our way to a life that's even better than we could have imagined.
John's story really highlights how anxiety can be a catalyst for growth. It can be a sign that something's out of alignment in our lives, a nudge to reevaluate our priorities, and make changes that will lead us toward greater happiness and well-being.
Speaking of realignment, Susan's story is a wonderful example of how rediscovering a long-lost passion can reignite our sense of purpose and help us manage anxiety.
Oh, Susan. Her story really struck a chord with me. It's something I think a lot of women, especially those who have dedicated years to raising families or caring for others, can relate to. That feeling of losing yourself a bit along the way, of putting your own dreams on hold.
Susan had always dreamed of being a writer, but after she got married and had children, she put that dream aside to focus on her family.
It's the classic story of a woman sacrificing her own aspirations to fulfill societal expectations.
It is, and for a while it worked. She found fulfillment in being a mother, in creating a loving home for her family. But as her children got older and more independent, she started to feel a sense of emptiness creeping in. She missed writing. She missed that creative outlet, that feeling of expressing herself through words.
It's like a part of her was missing, a part of her identity that had been dormant for so long.
Exactly. And this feeling of emptiness started to manifest as anxiety. She felt restless, unfulfilled, like she was living someone else's life.
So what did she do? Did she try to ignore these feelings and just carry on with her life?
Thankfully, she didn't. She recognized that something needed to change. She needed to reconnect with that part of herself that had been neglected for so long.
So she finally sat down and started writing that novel she'd always dreamed of.
She started a little smaller. She enrolled in a creative writing class at the local community college. It was a way to dip her toes back into the world of writing, to see if that spark was still there.
It's amazing how sometimes the smallest step can lead to such profound transformation.
It really is. And for Susan, that writing class was a game changer. She rediscovered the joy of writing, the satisfaction of creating something from nothing. She started sharing her work with others, receiving positive feedback and feeling that sense of accomplishment that had been missing for so long.
So it wasn't just about the act of writing itself, it was about the community, the connection, the feeling of being seen and appreciated for her talent.
Exactly. And as she reconnected with her passion, her anxiety started to fade. She was no longer feeling that sense of emptiness because she had found something that filled her up. That gave her a sense of purpose. She even started a blog and found a whole community of online writers who supported and encouraged her.
It's a beautiful reminder that it's never too late to pursue your passions, to rediscover those things that make you feel alive. And sometimes that's all it takes to manage anxiety, finding that thing that lights you up, that gives you a sense of purpose and belonging.
And it's about giving ourselves permission to prioritize our own well-being, to make time for the things that bring us joy, even if it means challenging societal expectations or breaking free from old patterns.
So we've heard from Sophia, Emily, Olivia, Mary, and Susan, 5 incredibly inspiring women who found their own unique paths to managing anxiety.
Each of their stories highlights a different aspect of this complex experience, from the importance of mindfulness and structure to the power of community, self-love, authenticity. and reconnecting with our passions.
What's striking is that none of them found a magical cure for anxiety. They didn't eliminate it completely. Instead, they found ways to manage it, to navigate the ups and downs, to live full and meaningful lives despite the challenges.
And that's a really important point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to anxiety. It's about finding what works for you, experimenting with different approaches, and being patient with yourself along the way.
It's like we've been saying throughout this deep dive, it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our exploration of these inspiring stories, there's one more theme that I think ties everything together beautifully: the idea of letting go.
Letting go, what do you mean by that?
Well, if you think about each of these women, they all had to let go of something in order to move forward, to manage their anxiety, to create a life that felt more authentic and fulfilling.
Okay, I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Sophia had to let go of the need to control everything and embrace the present moment. Emily had to let go of the pressure to be the perfect mom and allow herself to be vulnerable and seek support.
Exactly. Olivia had to let go of the fear of being alone and find the courage to love and accept herself. Mary had to let go of societal expectations and embrace her true self, even if it meant going against the grain. And Susan had to let go of the belief that her dreams were no longer possible and reclaim her passion for writing.
It's like each of them had to release something that was holding them back. Fear, expectations, old patterns, limiting beliefs, in order to create space for something new and beautiful to emerge.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes letting go is the key to growth, to healing, to finding peace and joy. And it's not about denying our anxiety or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about choosing to focus our energy on what truly matters: our passions, our connections, our well-being.
It's about shifting our attention from fear and worry to love, gratitude, and the beauty that already exists within us and around us. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of anxiety and resilience, I want to leave our listeners with this question. What are you holding on to that's no longer serving you? What can you let go of today to create space for greater peace, joy, and fulfillment in your life? Maybe it's a limiting belief, a past hurt, a fear that's keeping you stuck. Whatever it is, remember that you have the power to choose what you focus on, what you give your energy to. And by letting go of what no longer serves you, you open yourself up to a world of possibilities.
Beautifully said. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. And as these stories have shown us, even in the midst of anxiety, there is always hope, always strength, always the potential for growth and transformation.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, may you find the courage to let go and embrace the beauty of your own unique journey.